Before we get into the contents of the directive, let's look at what the directive is defining for clinical professionals. The directive is dictating rules for what clinical data are necessary to put a medical device on the market, as well as any requirements for post-market clinical follow-up, and the methodology that needs to be applied in making the necessary clinical evaluation steps. We further find important regulatory requirements on the safety reporting during clinical investigations, in addition to the vigilance reporting in a post-market release phase. As a preamble, Article 4 states that the Member States shall not create any obstacle to devices for clinical investigations, as long as they meet the conditions of Article 15 and Annex 8, which we will review later in this course. To manufacturers or sponsors, this means that a clear indication must be made on the device labeling that the devices are for clinical investigation only, unless devices already bear the CE mark, in case of a post-market surveillance study, during which the device is used within the same CE mark scope, meaning the same indication and no changes to the device. So for devices under clinical investigations, exact labeling instructions as well as the necessary regulatory approvals are needed as outlined further in this course, before such devices can be shipped to the investigational sites. We will review some of the most important general requirements, and here to start with essential requirement number 1. Which specifies that devices must be designed and manufactured in such a way that when used under conditions and for the intended purpose defined by the manufacturer, they will not compromise the clinical condition or safety of the patients. Note here that in the directive we only speak about manufacturer, who is the legal entity responsible for the medical device. We do not speak about the sponsor, who may be the manufacturer at the same time, but also a different entity, taking legal responsibility for the investigation, but not necessarily for the device. Note also that sponsor is not defined in the directive for the time being, but it is so in the ISO 14155. Now, what this essential requirement means for clinical people is mainly that we need to have the necessary procedures in place to ensure that the manufacturer provides clear instructions for use, and that the investigator must abide by these so that the device is applied to the patient without compromising the clinical condition or the safety of the patient.